LNG, or liquefied natural gas, has been a contentious subject in Canada for a number of years now. The proponents of more LNG point to growing demand in Asia. Particularly, they argue that green LNG, a low emission intensity LNG made on the West Coast, could help decarbonize the Chinese power grid and Asian power grids in general. However, that's not how things are panning out. And we're going to talk to Karen Tam Wu from Pembina Institute about some of the decisions that have been made in the Middle East to increase cheap LNG production and what the effect that that's had in North America. So welcome to the interview, Karen.
Thanks for having me.
So Qatar in particular has made a big expansion, is planning a big expansion of its LNG production, and that's chilled investment in North America. What can you tell us about that?
Qatar, as a little country, has set itself up earlier this year to become the world's largest producer of LNG. I think in total, it's over 100 million tons per year of LNG, which will be made available in the market. Just to put that into contrast, LNG Canada would be producing 18 million tons per year when it moves forward. So literally a drop in the bucket in comparison to what this tiny nation would be producing for the world. So China's a ready and welcome market for that LNG. And as a result of the Qatari move, several projects, I think about 3 from the US, have decided to take a step back, anticipating an LNG surplus in the years to come.
Now, we've seen a couple of projects canceled in Canada, and we've seen some investors pull out, saying that they were going to sell their share in a particular project. Is it looking less and less likely that we'll see any more LNG projects after LNG Canada is built?
Certainly in the short term, that's the way it's looking. I mean, in the short term, meaning in the next 5 to 10 years, I think it would be difficult to see any projects moving forward, especially larger ones, given Chevron and Woodside's sale, or putting up their halves for sale. And to be honest, it may be that some of these companies are looking to a different kind of product, potentially being hydrogen. We know that Woodside has maintained its share in the upstream in the gas fields in the Liard Basin. And it wouldn't surprise me if they're doing that, potentially hedging on a hydrogen future.
Yeah, that is a bit of a wild card. I mean, we weren't even talking about hydrogen, 3, 4, 5 years ago. That's really come on the scene in the last year or two. And that seems to be the direction that governments are going. The EU has a big hydrogen strategy. Canada has one. Alberta and other provinces, including BC, have them. So are you seeing a shift globally from a natural gas focus and natural gas as a bridge transition fuel to hydrogen?
It certainly seems to be that's the way a lot of governments and companies are thinking about what the energy mix for the future looks like. Certainly hydrogen has a lot of promise, and it has been talked about recently in the last year or two, but we have been trying to develop hydrogen as a fuel source for a few decades now. And the promise of hydrogen comes with the fact that when you burn it, it doesn't have any emissions. But the part that we're not talking as much about is that there's different ways of producing hydrogen. They're not all the same in terms of carbon intensity and therefore climate benefit. And in fact, the kind of Wild West gold rush frenzy that we saw with LNG is similar to what we're seeing with hydrogen now, in terms of the fact that we could develop our natural gas resources and convert that into hydrogen. But again, how it's made and how we're reducing the emissions from natural gas extraction through to production of hydrogen will matter. And we can also be producing hydrogen from renewable energy resources. So how hydrogen is made will make a big difference. And we haven't even talked about how you can use hydrogen in different end uses. It's not a one-to-one conversion.
Right. And my takeaway on this, Karen, to see what you, if you agree or not, and that is that, we're in the third decade of the energy transition, roughly. That tends to be the disruptive decade. And I think the stars are aligning for a very disruptive 2020s. And I think it's not so much whether LNG will go ahead or won't go ahead, hydrogen will go ahead, won't go ahead. It's the uncertainty. It's very uncertain at this point in time because things are changing so rapidly. We just don't know. It's hard to project even a year or two out.
Absolutely. As you said, we haven't really been talking, or governments hadn't really been taking hydrogen that seriously until the recent years, and that's because of just the changes in technology and also in the marketplace. And certainly, there's a lot of hope for what different kinds of technology like carbon capture could bring to the equation. But also there's some things that don't have to change. Like, we do need to focus on energy conservation first and foremost, and then looking at electrification, and direct electrification is the best way to reduce emissions directly. So some things don't change, and yet we do need to focus and continue putting our energy on some of those as well.
Karen, thank you very much for your insights. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.